Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is High Street Sports, but more importantly, this is episode number 1 of the Cannon Club podcast presented by High Street Sports. Guys, thank you for coming in. My name is Chris. This is Vince. A little backstory on what we're doing here. Both of us from the great city of Columbus, Ohio. Both of us grew up Blue Jackets fans. We've been talking, back and forth for a couple of years now about, doing something like this for the Blue Jackets, and kind of bringing our thoughts into a podcast form. And that kind of started 2 years ago. I created the CBJ Cannon Club Twitter account. So if you haven't already, go follow that. And that was kind of the stepping stone to get us to where we are right now. Vince, you want to go ahead and share, about yourself and your fandom for the Blue Jackets?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, though, if you do enjoy this show, please like and subscribe. It'll go a long way as far as bumping us up there and gaining some new followers and getting the word out about what we're doing here. But I grew up here in Columbus, Ohio, and continue to live in Columbus, Ohio. Been a Blue Jackets fan since the beginning, and really have loved hockey ever since it's been here in Columbus, going all the way back to the Chill days. So excited to kick this off. I think we have a lot to talk about today. First up being Patrik Laine playing center. And it looks like the experiment is actually going to stick. So he mentioned the other day that I'm not going to, when asked about measuring up to the NHL's top centers like McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews, Crosby, all the greats, he said, I'm not going to start kissing everybody's ass or pumping everybody's tires. I know I can compete with those guys, and that's why I wanted to do it in the first place. You love that attitude coming out of Patrik, especially after, I would say, the last couple of seasons where it's been pretty hard for him with injuries. And there were times where he almost looked disinterested. So interested to hear your thoughts on that and the attitude shift there, Chris.
I love it. And to be honest with you, man, everybody saw it in his first a couple of years in Winnipeg, the kind of playmaker, goal scorer, and, the kind of talent that Patrik Laine is. And, when you look at it from a perspective of where the Blue Jackets are as far as their roster construction goes, I love it. And, I didn't quite have Boone staying at the center position and Patrik moving into the center position. I kind of thought that, as the roster developed, we might see Boone get kicked back out to the wing, and, maybe, Patrik be on the first or second line or whatever it is as a winger. But, I'm here for the experiment, and all signs are pointing to this being, potentially a big tone setter for the Blue Jackets, especially when you pair him with, Gaudreau and, whoever it might be on the top line with him. Patrik can make plays, and he can make plays with the puck on his stick, and he can be a facilitator as much as he can be a goal scorer. And I think that's, it's exciting for the Blue Jackets when you stand back and look at the prospect of, what changing positions could mean for Patrik Laine and what it could mean for the rest of the Blue Jackets. So I think, this might prove to be a pretty big move for the Blue Jackets and new bench boss Pascal Vincent in the bunch. So I'm excited to see what Patty can do as a centerman. I'm excited to see how that could possibly change the dynamic of the top line for the Blue Jackets. So I don't, if he is as skilled as, or if he can play as skilled as he, showed that he can be throughout his first couple of years in the NHL, man, I'm really excited to see what this move could mean for Patrik.
Yeah, I think this move to center does a couple of things for Patrik, and the biggest being that it keeps his feet moving throughout the game, so you actually can see him moving around the D zone, especially a lot more. You see him moving a lot more, and it seems like he's faster. He's more engaged in the play, so you'll love to see that. I think that it's going to be really good. He had some He was originally playing with Gaudreau and I believe Marchenko in the preseason. The last preseason game, towards the end, I think it was in the third period, Cole Sillinger actually slotted in there where Marchenko was, and Sillinger ended up getting a goal off of that, and so it looks like Sillinger will be on that first line for opening night. Pretty cool story there as well. After Cole Sillinger had an abysmal season last year, where it looked like the sophomore slump was really in there. I also think that his off the ice activities, or who he was associating with, his girlfriend at the time, were played a part in that, as far as being distracted, a young man distracted trying to find love, while he's trying to make $900,000 as an NHL player in his sophomore season.
Yeah, it's going to be, and that's kind of part of the excitement about the prospect of moving line A to the center position is getting some, some different line mates up there with him, and getting the potential to have a really, really skilled top line for the Blue Jackets. So, Sillinger is, it's a guy that needs to make a step and kind of, take back control of his, trajectory as an NHL player. He showed a lot of flashes in his first, stint with the Blue Jackets. So hopefully he can get back to that form, and hopefully Patty can help him get there.
Yeah, and another one of the big off-season storylines was what Yarmo and JD did with the defensive depth, by adding Provorov and Damon Severson. I think that was the two biggest moves that were made in the offseason, and that includes, in my opinion, drafting Adam Fantilli. So, it looks like there's now a bit of a logjam at defense for the Blue Jackets with Blankenberg and Juracek sent down. Boquist looks like he's on the outside looking in for game number 1, and especially with the new named captains, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I'm really excited to see this revamped defense. They seem to play with a lot better structure now. Just watching them through this preseason, they seem like a team that understands what they're supposed to be doing, especially in that D zone. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, that was an area that the Blue Jackets absolutely had to improve on in this offseason. And, Yarmo and JD made a huge effort to do that. And it looks like they have done that. We'll, have to wait and see how that looks on the ice, when the real games start tomorrow. But, there was so much that was left on the ice last year for the Blue Jackets on the defensive end. And so much of it hurt just about everything the Blue Jackets were doing. And there's been a lot of talk about Elvis Merzlikins and where he is in his career, and what his future really looks like in Columbus and even beyond. But a lot of the I would say the shortcomings that Elvis had were amplified by a defense that had a lot of injury and a lot of inconsistency last year. So, you bring in Provorov and Severson, and you hope that can make a big difference for the Blue Jackets, who look to be a more physical team, who, they added some size there, which can't be understated enough. So, when you look at the Blue Jackets, what, Torts teams had as far as success wise was a tough physical defense that could move you off the puck, and that's what the Blue Jackets look to get back to. And hopefully those defensive additions can push the Blue Jackets towards that goal of just being a more tough, physically sound defense in front of Elvis, and hopefully that can help turn both of those aspects around, as far as the blue line and the goaltending goes. So they went out and made a swing, and now it's time to see, how that performs.
Yeah, and I really like Provorov's game. I think he kind of brings that grit that you need in a second pairing D. Although he played a lot of first pair D in Philadelphia, also also came from playing for Torts last season. So he knows what it's like to work hard and be held to a high standard every day. I really like that. And Severson really gives you a little bit more of an offensive upside for a defenseman. He plays really well, really good defensively. But I would say he's more of a two-way guy that you're going to get a little bit of scoring out of. And that's not to say Provorov is not going to do that, because he will. But I think you're going to see a little bit more out of those two. And really, it's just going to boost that defensive depth. And with the way it's looking right now, when a guy like Juracek, who's a right-handed defenseman, eventually pushes his way out of the AHL, and I don't think it's going to be long, whose spot does he take? Because on that right side, you've got Peak, who's slotted in to play with Werenski next or on opening night. You've got Provorov and Severson, and then you've got Bean and Goodbranson. So who are you taking out of there to put a potential Juracek in there?
Jake Bean, and that shouldn't even be a question. I don't care what you have to move to make that happen. I've had my fill of Jake Bean, and I know that, Carolina thought that he could have been a guy that could, turn into a mainstay in their defense, and that just never materialized. And he's shown some bright spots when he's been here. I don't want to, completely discount it. But if there was one guy that I had to take out, it would be Bean first.
That's fair. I mean, I think that he has certainly, shown that he's not the guy with the highest upside right now. He certainly could have that potential in the future, but he's got to put it together consistently if that's going to be the case. And another guy that needs to put it together consistently is Adam Boqvist, former 8th overall pick by the Chicago Blackhawks. And we're at a point now where I think this is his 3rd season with the Jackets, and they're not sure what to do with him, that he can't consistently keep in the lineup without injury. What are your thoughts there on Boqvist?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a guy who, just like you mentioned, consistency seems to be, one thing that Boki needs to improve on. And then he has been kind of snake bitten with some injuries that have kept him off the ice too, that, haven't really helped with, development or consistency in his play. So you'd like to see him stay healthy, and you'd like to see him, make a trajectory forward and, push to have some more playing time and push to stay in that lineup. Because as you mentioned, I mean, he's a guy that was drafted in the top 10, and obviously there's potential there, but it boils down to consistency and staying on the ice. And I can't help but think that I think the Blue Jackets are in a spot now where you have enough depth all over the ice, but mainly in the on the blue line, that hopefully, with practice and gameplay and minutes being kind of at a premium for some of those fringe guys, that when they make it into the lineup, that they make an impression and they play well enough to make it a conversation that Pascal and staff need to have to, and make it a tough one. So just consistency and health. And that's really what it boils down to for Boki, because I think we've seen when he gets on the ice and is in a groove, he's a valuable player for the Blue Jackets. You just want to see him stay healthy and, be able to do that on a night in and night out basis.
Yeah. And I was looking on the old CBJ Twitter the other day and found a comment that I had that I found was very interesting. And it was right after the rosters were made, showing Nick Blankenburg going down to Cleveland, which I kind of understand where that's at. I think he'll be back up. He's had enough NHL time in the last few years to say that he's a consistent guy, and you know what you're going to get, and can play a key depth role. But the comment was, Bean is too skinny to play defense for a full season. Just my opinion. Hopefully Blanks is back up soon. I'm at a loss for words here. Because if Bean is too skinny, what is Blankenberg then? I mean, is he like does he turn into the Hulk and I don't know it? Like, does he get green and monstrous? Like, I'm confused. We're talking about a guy that's like 5'8" and a buck 60.
I think what separates the two is that Blanks plays with an attitude that makes him about 6'8", and that's fun to watch. I mean, you've seen it. He's thrown a couple pretty big hits in his time with the Blue Jackets already. So from that perspective, his attitude and tenacity kind of gives him about another 8 inches to a foot onto that height, if you want to play it from that angle. But yeah, that's the only thing that I can think of in that respect.
Just for reference here, Jake Bean is listed at 6'1", 196 pounds on the official roster, and Nick Blankenberg is listed as 5'9", 177 pounds.
Okay.
So just trying to make sure that we're all aligned here, that our friend on the Twitter machine might have the right intention, but the comment was very misguided.
Yeah, well, you'll have that on the Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called.
Absolutely, that's Twitter. Absolutely, and moving right along, keeping it moving and grooving. First round draft pick, third overall, fell to the Jackets in dramatic fashion, and I mean fell in the best possible way. Adam Fantilli. What are your thoughts on Adam Fantilli coming in this year?
I'm very, very excited about Adam Fantilli, and I think a lot of Blue Jackets fans were pretty upset with the way that the draft lottery kind of shook out, and as they should have been. That was kind of a clown show there with the whole debacle with them announcing the Blue Jackets picking third before they went to commercial break and coming back and essentially acting like it never happened, which was very strange. But we'll leave that conversation for another day. But Adam Fantilli is absolutely a guy that the Blue Jackets fans should be happy to have. He is going to, maybe not right off the bat, but he will eventually, change a lot about the way that the Blue Jackets look offensively. And, he's a skilled guy, keeping that pipeline between Michigan hockey and the Blue Jackets flowing. And, if there's nothing else to be excited about, man, it's you just listen to guys that he's played with, listen to Kent Johnson talk about him, listen to Blankenberg talk about him. There's a lot to be excited for about Fantilli and what his skill set brings to the Blue Jackets. So I'm excited to have Fantilli. I'm excited to see him in the lineup. Going to be a lot of fun to watch him grow and watch him really, turn into a bona fide NHLer. So I'm excited about Fantilli.
Yeah, I am as well. I think his playmaking ability is going to be something that it really, really helps that depth scoring for these first couple of years until he becomes that true one center that the Blue Jackets have looked for 20 years. I mean, I don't think they've ever had a true number one center. So I'm excited for that. He can kind of be a power forward at times too. He likes to kind of mix it up and get dirty. So really excited to see what he can do. What Adam Fantilli versus Connor Bedard, who scores more points this season, and do either of them win the Calder Cup, or is it someone, or not the Calder Cup, the Calder Trophy? Sorry, two different trophies here. One is the AHL Championship Trophy, and the other is for the best rookie. But who do you think? What are your thoughts there?
I think last night you saw, like in flashes, what Connor Bedard can do on the ice, and everybody knows about how good Connor Bedard is. And I don't really think there's too much that needs to be said more about what he brings to the Blackhawks. But I think he is a bit of a smaller guy. He got pushed around a little bit last night, and I think that might be a common theme throughout the year. I think his skill is going to, shine through a lot. And I don't think I'm not by any means saying that there's anything to worry about Connor Bedard. But I think, for quote unquote a consolation prize, Adam Fantilli is not a bad one to have. So, I think there's a lot of potential for Fantilli. I think the Blackhawks are going to rely on Bedard a lot to score in a way that I don't think the Blue Jackets are going to have to lean on Fantilli. So I think just by pure shot volume, I think Connor Bedard is going to beat him at the end of the year for scoring more goals and having the flashier numbers to win that Calder Trophy. But I think that Fantilli is going to have an incredible season, and one that the Blue Jackets fans and organization should not be upset about. So I think Bedard, with the way that the NHL machine works and how trophies get handed out, we see that it's not always the right choice there. So I think I'll give the edge to Bedard in that one, but I think that Fantilli's going to have a phenomenal season.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're going to see Adam Fantilli break all of the Blue Jackets rookie records for scoring, and he's really going to be really that guy that they look to add that scoring depth right away. He's slotted in on the first power play right now, and kind of that either net front or bumper position where he's kind of in the front or one back in the front, but still in the middle. I like that because he does have the size to kind of mix it up there and help Boone with some of those tasks on the power play. I think that his passing and hustle will also help that power play move along. Speaking of moving along, announced earlier this evening, Jeff Rimmer, after his 20th season, which will be coming up this season, will be his final with the Blue Jackets as their play-by-play announcer. I love Rimmer. I grew up listening to him, watching every single game on Fox Sports Net, what's now Bally's, and should continue unless they really go bankrupt. We've been hearing that for how long now? So you just gotta roll with it. But I think that Jeff Rimmer at times shows his age. Kind of sometimes either gets lost in the play or mixes up names a lot. Jody Shelley does it too, but I think Jody Shelley does it to mess with him a little bit at times. But sad to see him go, but excited for and happy for him to finally retire and hang up the headphones and microphone after a great career.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the Blue Jackets, you have Bob McElligott on the radio, who does an incredible job. But, when you think about the voice of the Blue Jackets, at least for me anyways, it was always Jeff Rimmer. And, as you mentioned, watching the games growing up and hearing him on TV for as long as I can remember, it's been special. And, he's one of those guys that, when you have a guy that good and you keep him around for that long, they become synonymous. And he in my mind is one of the great voices of hockey. And the Blue Jackets and Blue Jackets fans are going to miss him. But thank you, Jeff, for all the memories, all the incredible calls that you've had, and like I said, Jeff Rimmer will always be synonymous with Blue Jackets hockey in my mind. So congrats on 20 years and congrats on a hell of a career. You'll be missed, but excited to see who jumps in the booth next. And we'll see who gets paired up with Jody, or if they're, going to change things up. I can't imagine they get rid of Jody, but excited to see what that announced booth looks like next year.
Yeah, I don't think Jody's going anywhere. He was on the Cam and Strick podcast on an episode that dropped yesterday. And listen to that interview. He seems to really love the being in the broadcast booth.
Mhm.
Really enjoys it. I think it fits him well. He's got a larger than life personality. He
Oh,
always
yeah.
did when he was a player.
Mhm.
Any guy that'll come out and fight for your city literally every single night. It is a great guy in my mind. So happy to keep him on, and I'll be excited to see what's next for the Blue Jackets TV commentators. And speaking of commentators, this man here, our goalie Elvis Merzlikins, seems to always have a lot of comments early in the season. This season, this year, his preseason quote has been, "They've doubted me, and I'm going to show them they're fucking wrong." And children, I apologize for the foul language. I'm just reading the quote. What do you think about Elvis coming out and really proclaiming that the haters are haters and I'm going to prove them wrong? Like, just keep hating because you're going to look stupid in the end.
I love the attitude. Um, but that's about all I'm, that's where I'm at with it. I was and am a big Elvis Merzlikins fan.
Hmm.
I think that he is a great person first and foremost. He's a cornerstone of the community, as far as like hockey in Columbus goes. Like, fans love him. He loves the fans, and he's a great guy. But it's coming to the point where we've got to see him turn that comment into real motivation and show results on the ice. And he came in with his hair on fire when he first broke into the lineup and took the role of the Blue Jackets starting goaltender. Um, we just need to see results at this point. And I'm a Elvis fan. I will always be an Elvis fan. But when you boil it down to what this is all about, it's all about results. And the 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 defense and the goaltending were issues last year, and that needs to be changed. And if Elvis is gonna be successful here and stay here long term, then he's got to show something this year. So this is a big year for Elvis, and I think he knows that. And pretty clearly, he's feeling what people are saying. And
Hmm.
I'm very, very hopeful that he can turn that into results this year. So looking forward to hopefully a big year from Elvis.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that other than, man, you got to back those words up on the ice and be the biggest brick wall in that net. I really would like to see a um, above 910 save percentage and less than, really, I would like to see less than like 4 goals a game from him.
Hmm.
I know that's not, I know that doesn't seem like a lot. But last year he had an 876 save percentage, and 4.23 goals per game. Played in 30 games, won 7, lost 18, and 2 overtime losses. So quite a rough season for him. So it's just one of those where it's okay. Put your money where your mouth is, and um, let's get between the pipes and see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly right. He's got to put it on the ice. Point blank. Period. He's got to put it on the ice, because when he's good, he's really good. But when he's
Yeah.
bad, he can be pretty bad. And last year, the defense didn't help him at all. A lot of soft defense in front of him. However, he's got to be that guy that he showed that he can be in his previous seasons with the Blue Jackets. So hopefully he can come off the worst year of his career and turn it into something special.
Yeah, I agree with you that the defense was putrid last season. But Jonas Corposalo had a 913 save percentage, 3.17 goals against, and played in 28 games, won 11, lost 11, and 3 overtime losses. So my point being, I I think that there was something going on with Elvis. I hope that he's worked it out. I know that the loss of Matisse Kivlenieks a couple of years ago really hurt him because of essentially Kivy saved his wife and child's life by sacrificing himself. And so, that can take a toll on you, and it certainly can take a while to recover from something like that. So I'm hoping that he finally finds that peace so that he can get in that net, and show us the Elvis Merzlikins that we know he can be. And by the way, I am an Elvis fan, always have been. So don't take that as hate. I'm just trying to, help understand the guy, and make it so that he we all understand where he's at. But right now you've got a 5x5 contract that you need to live up to, or patients are going to weigh real thin with the
Mhm.
organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of guys who really the organization's patients are not wearing thin on, two new alternate captains were named today. That is in addition to Boone Jenner, your captain, Boone Jenner, CBJ,
Mhm.
um, and alternate for quite a few years now, Zach Wierenski. We've now added Eric Goodbranson and Sean Corrali. Much deserved for Sean Corrali. I thought last season he really showed what a leader he is in the room and in this club. So really well deserved there. Corrali's going to wear it at home, and Goodbranson will wear it on the road. Happy for Goodbranson as well. He's one of those players where you hear a lot about how he's not so great, this or that. He's a defensive defenseman that plays really well on the penalty kill. So he plays his role well, but I think he's one of the older guys in that room that is kind of that guiding light. Thoughts on these captains?
I love it. I'm happy for Eric Goodbranson. I think he earned that alternate captain with the way that he played last year. It was up and down. I think you got a mixed bag review from a lot of the fifth line, but he's a veteran. He's been there, done that. He's consistent, and he's proven to kind of be a leader in that room, just kind of like you alluded to a second ago. And then for Sean Corrali, I was so happy for him in the way the season that he had last year. There were a lot of games where the Blue Jackets were absolutely dead as far as energy goes, and one of the only sources of energy was Sean Corrali flying around, hitting people, and just playing the Sean Corrali brand of hockey that we've become accustomed to seeing during his time in Columbus. So yeah, happy for Corrali.
Mhm.
Columbus kid deserves to have that accolade, and hopefully that'll propel him into another season where he just continues to wow the fifth line and be a consistent player on offense like the Blue Jackets need.
Yeah, and I would even take that a step further and say that Corrali sets the tone for what Blue Jackets hockey should be.
Hmm.
And I think that he learned a lot of that in Boston from the likes of Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, Brad
Hmm.
Marchand. As much of a rat as he is,
Hmm.
he still plays hard and he's a dang good player. So um, it says a lot when you learn from veterans like that when you're young, and then you can translate that into you into you being a leader later in your career. You love to see it, especially with a local guy, um, and happy to see a couple of local guys still on the team, because you do still have Jack Roslovic, and Carson Myers also still in the organization, just down in Cleveland. I guess really up in Cleveland because it is kind of north, but neither here nor there. Um,
Big geography show.
exactly. Another guy that plays like Corrali, Justin Danforth, really broke on the scene 2 years ago. with the Jackets on what was kind of a freak free agent signing from a guy who had bounced around from the East Coast League all the way to the KHL, played in Europe or in other leagues in Europe as well. Justin Danforth just signed another year extension for $1.1 million through the 24-25 season. I'm really excited to see what he can do coming up. I know that we were kind of scratching the surface there in his first season with the club. But he brings just another older guy to that room, another guy with a veteran mentality who's not afraid to work. I mean, he's been to like 8 different clubs or something trying to play pro hockey. Pretty excited for the guy.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have Danforth, signed again and with the club. As you mentioned, he's another veteran presence and another great veteran presence around some of the younger guys that are in the room. So, yeah, I think he's is a big piece when you take a step back and look at the roster construction for what it is. And he's a guy that can absolutely help the young guys. So I don't have any issue with bringing Justin Danforth back. And he's also a guy that can prove that, he can go in and score some goals too. So Danforth is a bit of a dynamic player. Now, how much and where he fits into the lineup, that's another question. But yeah, I like adding Danforth. I like having him, in the fold, and I think it's nothing but good for the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I think Danforth's going to be, I mean, just a bottom 6 guy that has occasional scoring bursts. I mean, we know he's got the speed. He loves the forecheck, but he's also a guy that is consistent on the penalty kill. He can play the power play when you need him to as well, because he's got a lethal shot. He knows where to go with the puck. He's confident with it. So really, really good move here. And at $1.1 million, that's a steal, because I think he's making somewhere around 900,000 right now. So you just love to see all of that. And really, really good for the young players in the room, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of another guy who's
A Blue Jacket favorite.
Has some opinions. A lot of people thought that his game-winning goal against the Pittsburgh Penguins last year was going to be the death of this franchise. Emil Bemstrom, he's had a really good camp. I think this is his 4th or 5th year in the NHL. He played 55 games last year, had 22 points, 7 goals, 15 assists. So I'm really excited to see what he can do this year. I think he's going to probably play like a second, third line role, probably more third line than second line, but I think he may bump up there when you need him to. He's really solid on the defensive end. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. But just going into the season, he's one of those guys that I want to watch out for. I know you're a big Bemstrom guy and really want to see him succeed. So I'll let you kind of talk about your feelings on him as well.
No, I mean, I like Bemstrom, and I can understand why a lot of people have been kind of low or out on Bemstrom. But I think so much of it comes down to consistency, and like him or love him, just like you said, he's pretty good on the defensive end of the ice, and when he shoots it, and if he gets in a scoring fit, watch out, because he can fill it up, and he can be a pretty exciting player with the puck on his stick in the offensive zone. So, yeah, I mean, I think this year is going to be a big year for Bemmer. He's going to have to go out there and prove it, because that offensive lineup, man, it's getting crowded, especially with the young guys that we have in the system and other things like that. So Bemstrom's going to need to prove it this year, and it's going to be an exciting proposition to go out there and watch him play. So I'm excited to have Bemstrom.
Plus or minus 15 goals for him, over or under, I guess.
Let's go 15.
He had 7 last season, Okay.
Let's go over. I'm going over. Why not? Let's be bold.
I think so too. I think he could have a solid 35 to 40 point season if he really plays to his potential and the way that he's played in the preseason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another guy with a ton of potential, and some buzz swirling around his name in the recent days is Kent Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
After the preseason, it was noted that he was wearing a green practice jersey, which Pascal Vincent yesterday clarified that was the jersey color for the extras, and went on to say, I'm still not sure he's going to play on Thursday but Vincent said he can only dress so many guys, and on the potential area for improvement, the pace of KJ's game right now. But he went on to say, but he's going to be a great player. One game isn't going to define his career. Do you think that this is a message to not only Kent Johnson, but to the whole team that says it doesn't matter who you are? If you're not working hard every single day, you're not going to get the privilege to put on a jacket sweater for that game?
Yeah, I mean, and that's I think a standard that he needs to start now and uphold. And I think so much of the thing that has kind of led to frustration for a lot of Blue Jackets fans has been the effort that they've seen on the ice during some points of games in the last couple of seasons. And a prime example of that is Patrick Laine. There's been some times, and you referenced it earlier, that Patrick kind of has looked disinterested. He's kind of disappeared from games and stuff like that. And KJ is a player with an unlimited amount of potential. We see it all the time, and I've seen a lot of hot takes on CBJ Twitter, as you'll have there, about how fans are kind of infatuated with his Michigan goal, right? And I think that's selling KJ short. I think obviously if Pascal is saying that his pace and his effort aren't up to snuff, then that's something that he has to work on, and he's got to get better in that. So I think it's an interesting situation, right? Because I think a lot of Blue Jackets fans are also kind of scarred with the way that Torts handled some of that stuff too. I don't think that Pascal is going to fall into that same almost like vindictive, healthy scratch game that Torts like to play. So I don't think that that's anything to worry about. But I think it's important that you have to set that standard, especially for the young guys in the room. That it takes a level of play up to here to stay in the league, and in order to stay in the lineup in the NHL, you're going to have to do that night in and night out. And hopefully KJ takes this on the chin and takes this for what it is, and continues to get better. But I don't, I'm not worried about Kent Johnson. I'm not worried about what this means for Kent Johnson and the Blue Jackets or anything like that. I think that there's been a lot of really hot takes that are swirling about this whole situation. I think it's something that might be necessary in Kent Johnson's development.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at times players may have the attitude that, hey, I'm gonna be in the lineup regardless, and I don't always have to take this seriously. Not saying that that's what KJ has done. I think that this is really just a tactic to try to motivate him to play a little better and play a little harder night in and night out, because I do think, and even based on Pazzy's comments, is he'll be fine at the end of this. But I think that this is the right message for a first time head coach to send and say, hey, we have a standard here. If you don't meet that standard, you're not going to play.
Yep.
And I think that sets the table for the whole team to say, okay, cool. Other notable scratches were Matthew Olivier, although he is on IR. He's still skating with the team though. So you wonder how bad that injury is, or if it's just an injury that he can skate on right now, but it's still kind of rehabbing. And then I was kind of shocked about this one is Liam Foudy. I don't think he's going to be a scratch for the whole season. I think he's going to be in and out of the lineup. Played 62 games last season. I think a lot of that out of necessity,
Mhm.
but scored 7 goals, had 7 assists, 14 points, a dash 26 in his plus minus. So not the best there, but he was playing mostly fourth line minutes, and um, that defense was just awful.
Mhm.
I'm kind of disappointed to see him there. I thought that his preseason was fairly good, but I think that this also says that he still has a step or two before he can definitively beat out Eric Robinson.
Yeah, and that bottom six I think is going to be pretty crowded for the majority of the year. I think you're going to see a lot of movement up and down with some of those guys, and um, that's the nature of the beast, man. And you love what Eric Robinson adds to the team. Hashtag fourth line mafia. He's an important part of the team, and but there's a lot of young guys and a lot of skill up and down these forwards. So it's going to take consistent play. It's going to take offensive production. It's going to take some defensive production as well for these forwards to stay in the lineup. So if that's something that Foodie needs to work on, or if that's something that, um, you know, uh, insert name here needs to work on, then I think that's what it's going to take. Because I think Pazzi is going to put a big emphasis on toughness, and which is something that I think the Blue Jackets have lacked the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there about Eric Robinson. Just kind of that anchor on the fourth line for the last several years, and that is going to be tough to beat out. And shout out to Robinson's Renegades on Twitter.
You beat me
Always a
to it.
good, always a good follow there. Had some really good interactions with whomever runs that account. Good people. But yeah, I think this is going to be shaping up to an interesting season. Um, I know we were talking defensive depth earlier. One player that will not be a part of the defensive depth going forward is Tim Burney. It was announced that he signed a 4-year deal in Switzerland. So I likely would not ever expect him back in North America. I thought he had a pretty good season last year. There was some areas that he could probably improve. So, congrats to him and good luck in Switzerland. But as we get to it, I just kind of wanted to bring up a couple of notable roster moves towards the end there
Mhm.
to set the opening night roster. You've got Chinny to the IR along with Olivier, and then notables who were there at the end and could have made it, brink play or I guess bubble players, Blankenberg, Juracek, and Voronkov all down to Cleveland. One note with Voronkov, obviously this is his first season in the NHL after playing the last few in the KHL, and being drafted by the Blue Jackets. He has a similar clause in his contract to Marchenko's last season, where if he's not in the NHL by a certain date, I think it's somewhere in December, that he can opt out of his contract and go back to the KHL. He looked a little slow in preseason, so I'm not surprised he went up to Cleveland for a brief what's likely a brief stint. He's a
Mhm.
large man that I think will fit in really well on that fourth line to start, and a line of Corrali, Voronkov, Robinson, or Danforth might be a little gross, or even Olivier in there. Although I think that Olivier and Voronkov would kind of play similar roles, being
Mhm.
that big kind of guy that's not afraid to get dirty and drop the mitts and sling that around. And then another notable was Denton Mateychuk, what, ninth or 10th overall pick 2 seasons ago, with David Juracek, was returned to Moose Jaw. And in his first game last night, had 2 apples, third star of the game. And I saw a clip of his interview, and he just talked about how great of a camp he had and how excited he was for the future, but was really happy to come back to Moose Jaw and continue his junior career there. I do believe he is still the team captain there. So you love to see that. You kind of hate it for a guy that's a tweener like that, where he could probably use a season in the AHL, but because of the rules with the Canadian Hockey League and NHL, they can't do it until you're an overager at the age of 20. So disappointed to see, but we may have not seen the last of Denton Mateychuk for this season. He could get called up at the end of the season. I think that is really the only opportunity, unless it's during the World Juniors and he doesn't make the Canadian World Juniors team, but I don't see that is anywhere near the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I don't think by any means what we see, currently out of this roster that the Blue Jackets are going to have on opening night is going to be what it looks like at the end of the season. But I think there's a lot of excitement as far as, the young guys that we have in this organization, the young guys that are up in the NHL right now, the young guys that are in the AHL, those that are in juniors or what have you. I mean, I look at this roster and I look at the prospect pool, and I'm excited. I'm excited about where this franchise is. I think obviously the big storyline in the last month and a half or so was obviously the coaching situation. That seems to be straightened out now, obviously with Pascal Vincent moving forward. So yeah, I mean, I think the guys could rally around Pascal this season. I see down here, we're going to kind of end with season predictions and things like that. I really, really, really think that, obviously you can't put the cart in front of the horse here, because I think there are some things that the Blue Jackets still need to figure out, and players need to develop, and things need to happen. But you have the question down here, and I don't mean to bury the lead, but you have the question down here: playoffs or no? And this is something that I've talked about with John Ross, and this is stuff that I've been thinking about, and we've talked about it. And where do we think this team's ceiling is as it stands? And I think, and it might be bias, it might be wishful thinking, I don't know what to call it, but when you have the prospect to have a new energy, just a different form of Patrick Laine, a different side of his playmaking ability, a different side of his goal scoring. When you pair him with a guy like Johnny Gaudreau and, whoever it might be on the other side, whether it's Cole Sillinger, whether it's, maybe Alexander Texier moves up to that first line at some point. Alexander Texier is going to add a lot back to this Columbus Blue Jackets team, and I think it's being undersold a little bit. So it's awesome to have number 42 back in the Union Blue. I can't believe we've made it this whole episode without even talking about him yet, but I'm very excited to see Alexander Texier back with the Blue Jackets. And then you look at another year of development for a guy like Kirill Marchenko. Once Kent Johnson moves past this little early season hurdle, there's a lot of playmaking ability in these forwards. And I think when you really break the roster down, I think the Blue Jackets are in a little bit better of a spot than I think people realize. And I think what this team is going to hinge upon is going to be blue line improvement. And I think with blue line improvement is going to come goaltending improvement. I'm in on the Blue Jackets to be a wild card team this year. And I don't know if that's a stretch. It might be, and I might get roasted for that opinion, but I'm in on the Blue Jackets to fight for one of those wild card spots this year. And I think we'll see a bit of a turnaround from the boys. And I'm really, really excited for this season. So what are your thoughts on the playoffs for the Blue Jackets, and where do you think this team is?
I think this team is in really good shape. I think they're maybe a year away from a playoff berth. Last season, they had 59 points. I know that injuries were a huge deal. You bring in Damon Severson, Ivan Provorov, and really Adam Fantilli in the forward group, and let's not forget Alexander Texier, who makes a lot of the people around him very good. And Pazzi has mentioned that a lot in this preseason camp was something that they missed is the guys that played with Alexander Texier the previous season that he played with the Jackets, so 21-22.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed to always make the guys that he was playing with better. But given those 5 or 6 players coming back in, and then a healthy Werenski, and really a more competent D, I don't think that they'll make a wild card spot this year. Last season, to be a wild card team in the East, you had to have 92 points. I think that 20 to 25 point jump is likely what you're going to see from the Jackets. I could see them in the high 70s, low 80s. And really that puts them, if they're in the low 80s, they're 2 or 3 teams back from the wild card. So they're kind of in that mix. And it could be one of those things like we saw from the Blues a couple of seasons ago where, and now I'm not saying the Jackets are going to do this, but where they weren't a great team. They went to the All-Star break, came back, and ended up winning the Stanley Cup that season. So there's always that possibility. I don't think it's going to happen with this Blue Jackets team. I would be elated if they get a playoff berth this season. But I do think that you're not far off from one. I think next season really could be your season to get that playoff berth.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting that we're talking about this. It's exciting that it's finally here. A long off season, I think, is what we're putting in the rear view here. I'm excited to see the puck drop. I'm excited to see fans back in Nationwide. Excited to kick off Jeff Rimmer's last season, calling the games for the Blue Jackets. So a lot of exciting stuff coming out of the Blue Jackets. They look to kind of turn that trajectory up instead of down. Look to get a lot better. Have a really good young, exciting roster with some some good veterans on there. And I think the sky's the limit, but we'll move forward, man. And it's good to be here. It's good to finally be on the Cannon Club pod presented by High Street Sports. Do you have any last thoughts before we get out of here and look for tomorrow's game?
Other than it's BJ season, man.
That's it, man. It's back. Blue Jackets hockey is back. The Cannon is back. Hopefully going to fire off a lot more than it did last year. So we're excited. We're here for the season. We're going to, kind of iron out and see what the schedule is for this pod. We wanted to get on here and do it, before the season started. So we'll make some announcements there. I'll make an announcement on the Cannon Club pod. Or on the Cannon Club Twitter, excuse me. So a lot more to come here from us here at High Street Sports and with the Cannon Club pod. So keep it locked here. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment. Let us know your thoughts on the Blue Jackets this season. Let us know what you think about the pod. Share the pod with a friend. Retweets, all that kind of stuff are much appreciated. Sub to the YouTube so don't miss on anything that we have coming here. It is BJ season. We're glad to be back. Glad to have you guys here. Go Jackets.
Free Boomer. Bring him back.